Somewhere in your body, there is probably a spot that thinks it can predict the rain. A knee, a shoulder, an old break that healed years ago but never quite went quiet. On certain mornings it starts talking before the first cloud shows up. And by dinner the storm rolls in. And you stand at the window thinking, I knew before the weatherman did. You are in very large company. Most people living with joint pain say the same thing. And this belief is older than the country you live in. Hippocrates wrote it down almost 2,500 years ago. Millions of witnesses. 24 centuries of testimony. All pointing at the sky. Then scientists finally checked the alibi. They gave smartphones to thousands of people in chronic pain. Had them log their pain every single day for over a year. And matched those logs against real weather records at each person's location. And the two suspects everyone blames, the rain and the cold, basically walked free. Which leaves only two possibilities. Either millions of people are imagining the whole thing, or we have spent 24 centuries accusing the wrong suspect. This video follows the real signal. From the sky, through your skin, into the joint, and on to the last stop on the line, where the actual culprit has been standing this entire time. By the end, you will know exactly what the weather can do to your body. And you will have one sentence that changes how you read every ache you have ever felt, every argument about weather and pain, every comment section fight, every debate at a family dinner table, runs on the same quiet mistake. Both sides talk about the weather like it is one single thing. Somebody says the weather makes my hips ache. Somebody else says studies show the weather does nothing. And the two of them can go back and forth for an hour without realizing they never agreed on what the weather even is. Because here is what actually happens on the day your knee starts complaining. The phrase rain is coming sounds like one event. It is at least four. The temperature slides. The moisture in the air climbs. The wind picks up, and the pressure of the atmosphere itself, the sheer weight of the air stacked above your head, begins to drop. Four separate physical changes, arriving as a package, and your body has no reason to care about all four the same way. So let us do what any real investigation does. Let us put the suspects in a lineup and look at each one under the light. First suspect, the cold. This is the one with a reputation. Every grandmother in America has testified against the cold. It has been blamed for stiff hands and cranky backs since before anyone was writing these things down. And when your joints hurt in January, the cold is standing right there looking guilty. Second suspect, the rain itself. The obvious one, it is the part of the storm you can see and hear and get soaked by, which makes it the easiest thing in the sky to accuse. Ask 100 people what bothers their knee, and most of them will say rainy days, because the rain is always at the scene of the crime. Third suspect, humidity. This one is slippery. You can feel a humid day on your skin, that thick, heavy air of a July afternoon in Georgia, but nobody can actually rate it with any precision. You know it is there. You could never testify to how much. And the fourth suspect, the one almost nobody names, barometric pressure. Right now there is a column of air above you reaching miles up into the sky, and it presses down on your body constantly, day and night, with a weight you have carried since the moment you were born. You have never felt it once. That is what makes this suspect interesting. It is completely invisible. It never takes a day off. And it has one habit none of the others share. It moves early. When a storm is on the way, the pressure starts falling hours before the first drop lands. If any suspect in this lineup can explain a knee that aches before the sky changes, it is the one that changes before the sky does. Four suspects. For most of history, all we had against them was testimony. Then, a few years ago, Researchers in Britain ran the biggest investigation this question has ever gotten. They called the project Cloudy with a Chance of Pain, which tells you scientists have a sense of humor. And the setup was simple and kind of brilliant. Thousands of people with chronic pain, arthritis, back pain, fibromyalgia, downloaded an app and rated their pain every day. No lab, no artificial weather chamber, just real people in their real lives. Meanwhile, the app quietly noted each person's location and matched it against the actual weather records for that spot. Not the weather people remembered. The weather that happened. By the end, the study had followed 2,658 people for about 15 months. Millions of data points. For the first time in 24 centuries, the testimony could be checked against the record. And the record was not what anybody expected. The days when pain flared, the bad days people had been reporting all along, did line up with something real. They lined up with falling pressure, with high humidity, and with stronger wind. The effect was genuine. It showed up in the math, but it was modest. A nudge rather than a hammer. And here is the number that proves it. On the worst possible combination of weather the study could find, a person's odds of a painful day went up by only a little over 20%. Not 200%. Not 10 times worse. A little over 20. The sky was tapping people on the shoulder, not knocking them down. And the two loudest suspects had nothing on them. The rain itself. The actual falling water everyone points at. No meaningful connection. The cold. The most accused suspect in human history. Temperature on its own showed nothing worth convicting. Sit with that for a second. Rain was never the criminal. Rain is just the only suspect you can see. Which means your aching knee might be more honest than anyone gave it credit for. It never claimed the rain hurt it. It reacted to the invisible part of the storm. The pressure sliding downward hours ahead of the clouds. And by the time the rain arrived and you finally noticed the weather, your knee had already been listening to it all morning. That is the whole secret behind the prediction trick. Your body does not see the future. It reads the part of the present that shows up early. But hold on. Before we congratulate ourselves, there is a hole in this case big enough to drive a truck through. Pressure and humidity are conditions in the air. Outside your window, outside your clothes. Your knee joint is sealed away under skin and fat and muscle and bone. So how does a change in the open sky reach a place the sky has never touched? To answer that, we have to go somewhere you have never been, even though you own it. Inside the joint itself. Picture your knee the way an engineer would, where the two big bones of your leg meet. They do not simply rest against each other. The whole meeting point is wrapped in a tough sleeve of tissue called a capsule, and that capsule is sealed. Inside it sits a small amount of fluid, thick and slippery, a little like egg white, cushioning the space where bone glides over bone. So your knee is, in a very real sense, a closed room, a tiny sealed chamber of tissue and fluid that you have carried through every day of your life. And that closed room has always lived in a quiet balance with the sky. The air outside your body presses in. The fluid and tissue inside press back. And the two sides settled their arrangement so long ago that you have never felt it happening. The sky pushes. The joint holds. And the whole thing runs in silence. Year after year. While you go about your life, never knowing a negotiation is taking place at all. Now a storm system starts moving toward your town, miles above your head. That column of air gets lighter, and the pressure at ground level begins to fall, slowly and steadily. Hours ahead of the weather you can actually see, down in the sealed room of your knee, one side of that old arrangement just eased off. The push from outside got a little weaker. Whatever sits inside the capsule, the fluid, the soft tissue, anything inflamed or swollen or scarred, now has a fraction more room to press outward. If your joints are healthy and quiet, this means nothing at all. The change is far too small. But if the tissue in that room is already irritated, already inflamed from arthritis, already threaded with scar from an old injury, then the nerve endings woven through that capsule are not starting from zero. They are already sensitive, already leaning forward. And even a small shift in their surroundings is a shift they might pick up. Now I have to stop and be straight with you, because this is where a lot of videos on this topic start lying. And I promised you an honest investigation. That change inside your knee is tiny. If you took a picture of your joint on a sunny, high-pressure morning, and another one as the storm rolled in, you could lay those two pictures side by side and struggle to find a single difference. Your knee does not puff up like a balloon when the barometer falls. Nothing swells in a way you could see or measure with a ruler. The cold might thicken that joint fluid a little, the way syrup pours slower in a cold kitchen. The tissues might expand by some whisper of a fraction. Scientists say might, because effects this small are brutally hard to pin down, even with good instruments. Every one of these is a reasonable suspect. Not one of them has ever been convicted. So let us be fair to the evidence and admit where this leaves us. We followed the signal from the sky all the way into the sealed room of the joint. And what we found there is real, but almost comically small. A whisper of pressure, a hint of thickness in the fluid. And yet the pain people describe on these days is loud. Genuinely loud. Some folks cancel plans over it. Some reach for pills they were trying to quit. There is a canyon between the size of the signal going in and the size of the pain coming out. And plain physics cannot carry us across it. Maybe behavior fills part of the gap. Think about what a gray, wet, blustery day does to a person. You skip the morning walk. You sit longer, and joints that sit too long get stiff. You sleep worse with the wind rattling the gutters. You stay inside feeling a little flat, a little low. Every one of those things can turn up pain. And not one of them has anything to do with the inside of your knee. On a lot of miserable days, the weather is not hurting your joints half as much as the day it created is. But even that cannot be the whole story. And you already know why. The behavior explanation covers pain that shows up during the storm. After the couch and the bad night and the canceled walk. It cannot explain you at the window at 7 in the morning, under a dry sky, on a day that has not gone wrong yet, with a knee that is already talking. That pain arrived before the weather did, before the behavior did. So look at what this case has become. We cleared the rain. We cleared the cold. Mostly, we traced the one real signal. Falling pressure riding out ahead of the storm, down into the sealed room of the joint. And the signal checks out. But it is a whisper, and the pain is a shout. Somewhere between your knee and your mind. Something is taking that whisper and turning the volume all the way up. That something is the real culprit of this entire mystery. It is not in the sky, and it is not in your knee. And once you see how it works, it will change more than the way you think about weather. It will change the way you read pain itself. Here is the assumption you have probably carried your whole life without ever saying it out loud. Pain is a gauge. Like the fuel gauge in your car. It sits there measuring damage. And when the needle climbs, something in your body must be getting worse. More pain. More harm. It feels so obvious that questioning it sounds ridiculous. Except your body has no such gauge. There is no meter inside your knee, faithfully reporting the state of the cartilage to headquarters. What you actually have is a network. Nerve endings in the joint pick up raw information. Pressure here. Stretch there. Chemistry shifting somewhere else. And they send it upstream. And then your nervous system does something no gauge has ever done. It interprets. It weighs that incoming report against everything else it knows. How you slept. What this joint has been through before. What you are afraid of. What happened the last dozen times a report like this came in. Only after all of that weighing does it settle on what you will feel. And, just as important, how loud. Pain is not a measurement your knee takes. Pain is a decision your nervous system makes. And decisions can change even when the facts underneath them do not. Which brings us to the sentence I promised you back at the start. The one worth keeping long after the details fade. Your body can hurt more without being damaged more. Read that again. Because it is the key to the whole mystery. The weather does not have to injure your joint to change your day. It only has to nudge a signal your nervous system was already inclined to take seriously. The falling pressure writes a whisper. The system holding the microphone decides whether that whisper gets read in a calm voice or shouted through a bullhorn. On a storm morning, nothing new has broken inside your knee. The message barely changed. The volume did. And that volume knob sits at a different setting in every single body. Which finally explains the thing that has made this argument so bitter for so long. Picture a husband and wife sharing a house. Same town. Same sky. Same falling barometer sliding over both their heads all night. She wakes up aching from her hips to her hands. He wakes up feeling fine. And over coffee he gives her that look. The one that says, it is probably all in your head. They slept under identical weather. They did not wake up behind identical amplifiers. Her system has its reasons. Maybe there is arthritis in those hips. Tissue that really is inflamed. Nerve endings that have spent years leaning forward. Maybe an old injury left scar behind. And scarred ground gets watched more closely. The way a neighborhood keeps an eye on the corner where something bad once happened. Add a rough night of sleep, which turns pain up in just about everyone. Then add one more thing. The forecast she saw last night. Because expectation is part of the machine too. A brain that expects pain turns its own sensitivity up in advance. And that is not weakness, and it is not imagination. It is how every pain system on earth works. In soldiers and athletes and grandmothers alike. 4 dials. All nudged upward. All pointing the same way before the storm even arrives. His dials sit low. Healthy tissue. No history at that address. A decent night of sleep. No expectation. The same whisper reaches both of them. Only one system treats it as news. The weather outside may be identical. The amplifiers are not. And now, at last, we can close the case we opened in the first minute of this video. Remember the standoff. Millions of witnesses swearing the weather moves their pain. And study after study coming back with a shrug. For years, each side has treated the other as fools. But look at what those studies were actually doing. They were asking one giant question. Does weather cause pain in people? As if people were all the same person. Then they averaged everyone together. The man with the low dials and the woman with the high ones. The arthritic knee and the healthy one. All poured into the same bucket of math. Average a real effect in some bodies against no effect in most bodies. And you land on a number close to 0. Every time. The witnesses were not lying. The data was not lying. They were answering 2 different questions. The honest question was never, does weather cause pain? The honest question is, for which person? Carrying which history? Under which mix of pressure and humidity and wind? Does a bad day become more likely? Ask it that way. And the war between experience and evidence quietly ends. One last piece of housekeeping. Because a fair investigation follows the evidence even when it stings a little. Your memory has dials too. And they favor a good story. The morning your knee ached and the storm came. That one gets filed away and retold for years. The morning your knee ached and the sky stayed a stubborn blue. That one just evaporates. Nobody keeps their misses. So your sense that your body predicts the weather is probably running a little hotter than your real track record. That does not make the effect fake. It makes you human. And it explains why the belief feels so much more certain than the evidence can back up. So here is the case. Closed. A real signal falls out of the sky, hours ahead of the rain. It slips into the sealed room of the joint as a whisper, and a nervous system shaped by your tissue, your history, your sleep. And what you expect decides how loud that whisper gets to play. No single villain. A chain. Which leaves one question standing. The only one that actually matters tonight. What do you do with a body that turns the volume up? Start with the payoff you have already earned. Because it changes the next storm before you lift a finger. The next time the pressure drops and that familiar ache wakes up, you are going to hear it differently. The old translation was automatic and a little frightening. More pain means my joint is getting worse. Means the damage is spreading. Means be careful. Now you know the better read. When it is the same ache you have felt 100 times before, that flare is the volume climbing. Not fresh damage in the joint. The signal got amplified. An amplification pass. And that one piece of knowledge does real work. Because fear has a seat at the amplifier too. A brain that reads every flare as new injury turns its own dials up. A brain that can say, I know what this is. It is the volume and not the wound. Tends to turn them back down. Calm is not just a nicer way to feel. In chronic pain, calm is quieter. So put your hands on the dials you can actually reach. The barometer is not one of them. You will never control the sky, and you do not need to. Because the sky was only ever a nudge. Movement is a dial you own. On rotten days, the instinct is to fold up on the couch and guard the sore spots. And for a lot of people, that is exactly backward. Because joints stiffen far more from stillness than from weather. Gentle motion that is already safe for you. A walk around the house. Some easy stretching. Whatever your body knows how to do. Keeps the machinery warm and tells the watchful parts of your nervous system that this body is a safe place to be. Warmth is a dial. If a hot shower or a heating pad feels good on a gray morning, that comfort is real and it counts. Whatever the mechanism turns out to be. And sleep might be the biggest dial of them all. Most worth protecting on the very night a storm is rolling in. Which is the same night the wind and your own worry will try hardest to steal it. And if you want to know whether the weather truly moves your pain, you can read your own file better than any video ever could. Rate your pain at the same hour every day for 2 weeks. And write down how you slept and how much you moved while you are at it. Do not peek at the forecast before you log it. Then, compare your notes against the weather afterward. Whatever pattern shows up will be yours. And it will be honest. One boundary, and it matters more than anything else I have told you. This whole story is about familiar pain getting louder. It is not about new pain. An ache in a place you have never felt one. A joint that is swollen or hot or red. Numbness that will not go away. Weakness. Or pain that climbs week after week no matter what the sky is doing. None of that is your body listening to the weather. That is your body asking for a doctor. And taking it to one is not overreacting. It is the smartest read of the data you will ever make. So no, your knee never told the future. It was reporting the present the whole time. A body carrying its own particular history. Meeting a morning when the air had already begun to change before the sky would admit a thing. You were not imagining it. And it was never quite what you thought. The storm was never inside your joints. It was always in the listening. Stay warm tonight.